Welcome to the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel. Today I'm joined by the big man Bakar to preview Game Week 4. We've got lots to talk about. Bakar, you got a couple of transfers that you could be using. First of all, talk to us. How was Game Week 3? You halved your rank.
Thanks for having me, Jack. Hello and welcome to all the listeners and viewers. 56 points, a reasonable week. It was a good week. The patience with Rashford and Fernandes finally paid off. Again, every single week, I'm happy that someone has stepped up from my team. They're sort of carrying my team on their backs. Firstly, in the first 2 weeks, it was Brian and Bomo. Now it's the United guys who've stepped up, rewarding me for their patience. So I'm hoping someone does step up again in Game Week 4 to save me, because it's not been a collective effort from my team. It's always one or two guys who are hauling. But I'm waiting for the perfect week where all of them step up. So let's hope this can be the week. Let's hope this can be the week.
Could well be. I do need to mention it quickly. Your bench. Talk to me.
Yeah, I mean, I benched a doggy. I got him in this week. I mean, obviously, in hindsight, I would regret not playing him. But to be very honest, I mean, 9 times out of 10, I would have played the 3 guys that I had. Estupinan at home to West Ham, Chilwell at home to Luton, and Saliba at home to Fulham. I mean, there was no way I was going to bench either of those. So, yeah, it is what it is. But again, I'm happy to have a doggy going forward.
Absolutely. And a really good, strong green arrow anyway. If I offered you this position at the start of the season, would you have taken it?
Definitely. I think I'm well placed at this stage of the season. But the thing is that the ranks are very compressed, and one or two good or bad weeks can push you up and down the ranks so quickly. The ranks are very volatile. So again, at this season, I'm happy, but I know I'm bad. One bad week away from falling behind the curve. So it's very important to stay on it.
That's absolutely true. And I think that's going to be very prevalent this week with transfers. We've got a lot to get through, Bakar. Wildcard chat. I've seen a little bit of that in the community. People getting a little bit, perhaps trigger happy, wanting to go with that. We're going to get your thoughts on that. And then the rest of your team as well. Let's have a look first at how your team is looking for the upcoming game week. Okay, mate. So here is the team. A 94% game week rating. To be honest, it's actually quite low given what we've seen from the previous 3 game weeks. Not the best. I think the defense in particular is not looking super strong. Saliba, United at home. Udogie, Burnley away maybe is an option for you, first bench. Estupinan as well, perhaps now not looking the best. What are you thinking in your defense? Pickford too.
Yeah, I think so far this is the week where my team looks weakest on paper. It doesn't help that Arsenal and United are playing against each other, and I have 4 of those attackers. That's one of the main reasons. And then, as you rightly pointed out, the defense, other than Chilwell, I'm not that confident about. I mean, Pickford's been a bit of a disaster really, but again, thankfully, none of the other keepers have really done that well to make me sort of regret it that much. So yeah, Pickford hasn't done well as such. So yeah, the team doesn't exactly look good on paper, but having said that, I think most of the players that I have are good long-term picks. So I don't necessarily feel the need to even use my 2 free transfers, because I sort of am of the opinion that yes, these guys have rough fixtures this week, but they will do well going forward. For example, the United guys, I don't really want to sell Rashford or Bruno. Their underlying numbers are very good, and they have a very good run of fixtures going forward. They have Brighton in Game Week 5. Brighton can't keep a clean sheet to save their lives, and then after that, United have a really, really strong run where they face Burnley, Crystal Palace, Brentford, and Sheffield United in their upcoming 4 weeks. So yeah, I can't really sell the United guys. I don't want to sell them. Bruno's numbers, his non-pen XGI is among the best in the league so far. Rashford, I mean, his numbers are all right as well. They're not as good, but I feel as if he still carries a lot of goal threat, especially if he's playing on that left-hand side. So yeah, while I want to fix things, I don't want to I don't want to sort of get tunnel vision into thinking that I have to focus only on this week, because again, you have to think from a long-term perspective.
Sure thing. You know what? Let's go through position by position. Your thoughts on Pickford. You have 1.5 million in the bank. Anything in your mind to say, let's upgrade him, let's go to Edison, cover that City defense? Obviously, it didn't work out this week, but you know, they were so close to a very solid, pretty simple clean sheet once again. Just the mistake that cost them there. Anything in that?
More than Edison, I think if I was tempted to upgrade Pickford, it would be to Flecken. I think Flecken is the 4.5 million keeper of choice. Brentford they've conceded the 4th highest number of shots from outside the box, yet they're second best for fewest big chances conceded, which tells you that Flecken can haul big because they don't concede high quality shots, but they concede plenty of shots from long range, which is ideal for a goalkeeper, very similar to what Raya did last season, accumulating saves. So yeah, Flecken is the one for me, but I don't feel as if there's enough upside removing a keeper out to buy another keeper. I very rarely would advocate that, but it seems like a low upside, especially considering how poor Sheffield United have looked so far. And Everton, to be very honest, in the two home games so far, they've been all right defensively. Apart from the one brain fade moment that they always sort of tend to go through, they've looked really good. Their defensive underlying data isn't bad at all. They've dominated games. They should have won those games. So I'm not totally convinced, especially looking at how toothless Sheffield United have been. So I don't want to use a transfer there this week. It seems like a very sideways, low upside move to me.
Okay, sure thing. So moving on to the defense, a player that's done really well last week, Malo Gusto. Anything in him? You know, you've got Saliba there with a tough couple of fixtures coming up now. 3.3 predicted points, not the best. You could drop down to someone like a Gusto, get some money. People with Gabriel as well. Do you think it's time for him finally to leave the team? What do you think there?
My counter question to you is that what do you need the money for? Because
every other at this stage it makes legitimate.
Exactly. Every other pick is almost affordable. Team value is not really in question these days. And we've heard news that Reece James could be back for Game Week 5. Of course, he can get injured again. I mean, that's the way he is. But the main reason for not looking at Gusto or not considering him is because I think it feels it feels a case of point chasing. And secondly, I don't want to get priced out of Sterling, and Sterling has looked so good in the previous fixture that I do have this feeling that the optimal three to have from Chelsea are Chilwell, Sterling, and Jackson.
I agree.
Which sort of makes me question the Gusto pick, because that would basically rule me out of Sterling.
Yeah. 100%. And moving on to Sterling, is he in your thoughts? Looking at your midfield, as you said, you don't necessarily want to move on the United players, and Burma with some really good fixtures coming up despite the blank. Saka, if he's back on penalties, then there's a reason we picked him in the first place. But Martinelli is one that hasn't really impressed so far this season. Are you looking to move him out?
Because there's nothing better to do, I might. But I'm not convinced. I mean, this is the least I've been convinced about my transfers so far this season. I'll give you a list of pros and cons for keeping and selling him.
Okay.
I mean, at this moment in time, I'm leaning towards selling him. It's because of the fact that Jesus is back, and now that Jesus is back, I expect him and Nketiah to share minutes going forward up front, which would mean that Trossard likely comes in for Martinelli at, let's say, the 70-75 minute mark in games. Yeah. And this will become more of a factor going forward because the Champions League is going to come into play before Game Week 5. Obviously, now that we've seen that the Premier League have increased stoppage time, the games are almost lasting 95 to 100 minutes. If someone is getting subbed around the 70 to 75 minute mark, it doesn't really feel optimal. So while he remains a good pick, I don't think he's the optimal pick. And this is my point. I mean, he's a completely good pick to have, but the season the story of the season seems to be that you will be selling completely good picks on paper for optimal picks, right? There's nothing wrong with holding Martinelli, but you just are going to look at optimal picks. I mean, the likes of Maddison and Sterling are the ones that stand out. And I'm looking at possibly upgrading Martinelli to either of those. Having said that, I think that Martinelli could still do well, especially this week. Arsenal United has historically been high scoring. Arsenal tend to record a very high XG in these kind of fixtures. In fact, last season, they recorded a very high XG against both United and Spurs at home, and they faced both those opponents in the next three, and Everton apart from that. So Arsenal's fixtures still are fine in my book. It's just that the expected minutes of Martinelli are basically making me possibly sell him because nothing else is standing out in my team. I'm sort of compelled to sell him, but I don't think it's an obvious move to make. I mean, after the cup games, if something comes up, my plans will completely change.
Yeah, it's very true. Recording this on Monday, it's absolutely the case that we need to wait for information and see what happens in the cup games especially, and just, injuries obviously could change anything. But you look at someone like Sterling and those fixtures, knowing that he's nailed on for that position. It's very rare that he's going to get subbed off at all, in my opinion. And comparison to Martinelli, it does look pretty good. It's such a good player when he's on form, as we all know. And now he looks almost back to his best. Saying that he wants to get the most goals this season for Chelsea, he's got to tempt you. But let's talk about other midfield options. Maddison, fit, looks really good. Is he another option that you could go to from Martinelli? Or is there even anyone else that you're looking at? Maybe even a Foden?
I'm personally more inclined towards Maddison and Sterling rather than Foden.
Okay.
Because of the Champions League that's going to come into play for City soon, and the fact that Bernardo Silva is back fit. And I mean, there's every chance that if he's in the team, then Alvarez and Foden are competing for one spot. I'm not personally considering Foden as such. I think the week to get him was game week 3. That fixture is gone. So I'm not looking at that move personally. I think I would rather go to Sterling or Maddison, who, in my opinion, have equally explosive potential and are more secure for expected minutes. So yeah, these two are the ones. Maddison is more talismanic as well. His non-pen XGI is second only to Bruno in the league so far. His numbers are absolutely incredible. So he's someone I'm considering. He just feels so talismanic in that Spurs side, because strangely enough, the front three Spurs haven't clicked so far, but they're an attack that seems to be functioning, and their fixtures over a long period of time are good. I slightly prefer Sterling to Maddison because of the game week 6 and 7 fixtures when Maddison has Arsenal away and Liverpool at home in game week 6 and 7. Sterling has Villa at home and Fulham away, which is why I slightly prefer Sterling, and I think Sterling has a slightly greater goal threat as well. But I mean, I think Maddison is going to points in this Spurs side. He's just going to be very, very, very effective.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I was just watching the game. I just thought it was brilliant. Just Maddison at his best. What people say, and I thought this as well a little bit, he comes quite deep, collects the ball. You're like, do you really want a fancy asset to be that deep? Linking up, playing in the base of midfield sometimes. But then he gets forward. He's the creator. In the same way that Kane would drop deep, you'd be like, do I want my striker dropping deep? He'd arrive at the box and score loads of goals. Maddison, to be fair, you see with his goal, great run, great finish. He can do that as well.
On set pieces as well, and he was the main goal threat. I mean, for Spurs, because Richarlison was sort of ineffective, and Maddison seemed to be getting into those spaces and making those runs in behind. So I think he has the qualities. The good thing about him is that he's one return away from getting maximum bonus points, because he creates so many chances through set pieces. That's the things, which is why I'm not totally convinced on Sterling over Maddison. I think it's a very 50-50 call to make, and I will make it closer to the deadline, especially considering the next 2 fixtures for Spurs. They're really good as well, Burnley and Sheffield United at home. So it's see my point. I mean, I think Martinelli is totally fine to give one, but when there are so many other options that seem optimal and that seem more tempting, then you might be tempted to jump ship.
No, I agree with you. I saw your tweet. Both our Twitters are on screen now, in which you said that you feel like this season, as you pretty much just said there, it's not going to be a case of selling players when they're out of form or looking bad. It's going to be going for players that are just looking unbelievably good, and you have to sell sometimes good assets to get those unbelievable assets. I completely agree with that.
I think you did a very similar move last week with Watkins to Jackson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, there was nothing wrong with selling or keeping Watkins rather, right? But you sold him because Jackson seemed like a more optimal pick. So the logic is very similar.
Well, exactly. And we saw with Watkins, I mean, he could have absolutely hauled in that game. That's the risk that you run. But, over a period of a number of game weeks, I thought that Jackson may be the best pick.
Yeah.
The game next week, for example, is the one where I thought, comparatively, that looks really strong. Let's talk about forwards then. Watkins, João Pedro, do they need to go now for Jackson? I mean, even maybe Alvarez? I don't know. He played well, but obviously blanked. What's going on with your forward spot? You've got Jackson in there. Looks good. Is that who you'd go for now? Free choice?
I think Haaland and Jackson are nailed in my team for the weeks to come, a pending injury. If anyone has João Pedro, I would sell. There's too big of a risk with minutes going forward. In his interview very recently, De Zerbi said that he needed more time with the team to settle in. So I'd assume that De Zerbi would give him a bit more time for playing him in the team more regularly. I'd sell him for Jackson. I prefer Jackson over Alvarez because he's more of a focal point. His numbers are better. He's had 4 big chances in fact, 5 big chances to Alvarez's 2 so far. And he just seems more of a goal threat. Going forward, as I mentioned earlier, Foden and Alvarez could be locked for rotation in this role. So, I mean, I'm not against Alvarez's pick. I think he's a completely fine pick. But if I was picking one, I would go to Jackson.
Sure thing. Okay, so that is how your team is looking going forward. Obviously, early in the week, so we've got some initial thoughts there. We're now going to have a look at your AI recommended transfers and see if that gives you some sort of, advice, maybe a little bit of a tip as to where you may use 1 or 2 transfers this week. So let's get into them. Okay, Bakar. So the first move is Martinelli out for Foden. Now, you've mentioned that you are not entirely sure on Foden now, but we've spoken a lot about Martinelli. I feel like that's a move that we've chatted about. You think that maybe there's higher upside in the likes of a Sterling and Maddison. That's fine. The second move is one that I think we need to chat about more. It's Kabore out for Gvardiol. I want to hear your thoughts on City defense here. More than perhaps this being an optimal transfer for your team, it's all about, you know, whether you'd like to have a more solid structure overall and have more players on your bench that can come in. I think Gvardiol's been recommended here because if you look at your team for this week in particular, you've got Saliba at United at home. Estupinian maybe not even the best pick. Udogie away at Burnley. You know, it could be a tough game there, perhaps, in terms of for the defence and the clean sheet. Let's talk City defence then. Is Gvardiol a player that you're considering, or just City defence overall?
Yes, I am. I am considering them because, I mean, their numbers, as always, are elite and the fixtures are great. So they will get points going forward. I have no doubts regarding that. It's more of a question of what do I do with the funds if I don't invest in a City defender.
Yeah.
And I mean, in our episode last week, I mentioned that I was looking at Trippier from Gameweek 5 onwards for Newcastle's run, because Newcastle's defensive statistics have been really good as well. So Trippier is someone I have an eye on, but I'm slightly questioning my transfer target because Botman got injured yesterday, which means that Dan Burn is likely to play as a centre back unless Newcastle don't invest. If Dan Burn plays in the center, then there's a chance that Livramento could start on the right with Trippier inverting on the left. And if Trippier is inverting on the left, he's not as attacking. That is something I'm considering. And if Trippier is not in the mix, long story short, I would go with the City defender. But I'm not entirely sure whether to invest right now, because at this point in time, I'm really not sure whether it would be worth going for Trippier from, let's say, Gameweek 5 onwards. But I would want to be in a position where I can have maximum flexibility to be in a position to decide whether I want Trippier. And if I want Trippier, then I can get him in one transfer by Gameweek 5, which is why I'm sort of hesitant to commit on a City defender right now. But I mean, City defense is amazing. Diaz is the most nailed pick. Gvardiol could still be at risk from Akin in certain types of games, but Diaz is the one I'm more realistically considering. And if I do get Diaz, it would probably be for Saliba or someone of that sort. I don't think I would sell Kabore.
Yeah, okay, sure thing. Gives you some sort of idea as to what you could potentially do. And guys, if you would like to get your own AI recommended transfers personalized to your team, the link to do so and sign up to Fantasy Football Hub is down below. Make use of it. It gives you something to think about. Okay, Bakar, that is it for your team. Now, one thing I do want to ask you about, just in the outro here, is wildcards. Now, obviously, this is team dependent, but coming into Game Week 4, do you think there's any justification for people out there who may not like the look of their teams? You know, maybe still have Gabriel in there, João Pedro, the likes of Richarlison. If you've got all those headaches, do you think there's license to go with a wildcard now?
I mean, there are lots of picks who don't seem optimal anymore. There's João Pedro, like you mentioned, Richarlison, Pickford, Gabriel. A lot of people are stuck with Gabriel. A lot of people have 4 million defenders who are not playable. A lot of people have Salah, who they're looking to sell. Similarly, Watkins, some people are looking to sell him just to get, not that there's anything wrong with the pick, but just to get the shiny new toys that are available. I think as of now, most template teams that I see don't require a wild card, and they're perfectly good teams on paper. And I think most teams are fixable with just one hit. Having said that, if you have someone like a Gabriel, someone like a Richarlison, all these headaches in your team, then I can see some merit to wildcarding, because then you can jump on the likes of, Maddison, the Sterlings, the Chilwells, and go hard on City for their fixtures. So I do see some merit to wildcarding. I'm not totally opposed to it, but it's specifically team dependent. Most teams don't require it, but there are a few cases that I've seen which require a wildcard. A lot of people who've actually ignored Brian Mbeumo, a lot of people are looking to bring him in as well. So
yeah,
there are a lot of those people as well. A lot of people have those transfer booked. I mean, we were lucky enough to have him from Gameweek 1, but a lot of people still don't have him. A lot of people went from Mitoma. They're looking to get Mbeumo this week.
I have Mitoma, to be fair. Mbeumo probably was the best pick now looking at those fixtures, but Mbeumo definitely still a great pick.
So a lot of people are looking to bring him in this week as well. So those kind of transfers which people have booked are sort of accumulating. And that is what is leaning them towards wildcarding. So I do see the merit to it. I'm not totally against it, because this is a week where I think your wildcard team and your post wildcard team could look significantly different.
Yeah, I think that's very solid advice. I think it'd be easy to sit here and say, no, it's way too early. Come on, at least wait for the international break or or wait till a fixture swing in game week 8, 9, or even 10. But if your team needs it, go for it. You can be aggressive with a wildcard and it can definitely pay off, even if your team looks decent, but you want to get to a great team. Yeah, I completely agree with Bakar. And there we go. Thank you very much, Bakar, as always, for your tips and advice. Good luck in the upcoming game week. Guys, once again, make use of Fantasy Football Hub. Sign up down below. Still 50% off there. And yeah, we will see you all on the next one.